instances where you had a cluster of units failing. Because you have developed sufficient headspace, you don't have to go and use the instrument of load shedding to protect the grid. So what did we do in that instance? We were able to rely on diesel. So what's the point I'm making is that last year, if we faced a similar situation that we experienced during the large part of September, we'd have gone into a load shedding mode. But because Mr. Nxumalo and the team had built sufficient headspace, we didn't go into the load shedding mode. We used diesel more than what we wanted to use. But of course, for that month, but overall, we are still about 12 billion rands or so, better than where we're at. So this talks to the resilience of the system. So the system is resilient. The system can withstand major cluster of major failures in the form of a cluster of units failing. And whilst that is happening, Mr. Nxumalo is able to also do planned maintenance. The lights are on, the EAF is up, the PCLF is also up because we are building for this future of ensuring that the load shedding is something behind us. And of course, from a point of view of the UCLF, this you want to sit down. UCLF, like I always say, in not so sophisticated technical terms, is the reliability of your units. They don't fail as and when as they want to. And secondly, is the efficiency of those units. They deliver the approximate megawatts for those that they are designed for. They approximate the generation capacity relative to what they are designed to churn out. And we have seen that what the team has done was to bring that down. So this is the devil. So this is what we are fighting. This is our enemy. This is what we want to obliterate. So you remember that an enemy is not like an opponent you want to defeat, an enemy you want to kill. This is what we want to do. We want to address this thing called UCLF. Once you address it and you suppress it, there's significant. And in the calculation of the team, led by Mr. Marokane, the group CEO, is that if we consistently are below 10,000 megawatts, we are fine. And remember, we are moving from a high of about 18,000 megawatts last year. And of course, we've been averaging, I think, about 11,500 megawatts. Again, you can see there's an improvement there of about 6,500 megawatts. So the team has done tremendously well in that regard. And that's why it's important that we're able to examine each and every feature of this performance that we're talking about. And then as I move towards the close, what the team also does is to, so remember what I present to you all the time, what the ESCOM gets to communicate is the aggregate performance. So when Ms. Daphne goes out to communicate the spokesperson of ESCOM, she talks about the aggregate. But what the team does, what Mr. Marokane does and Mr. Nxumalo and the rest of the team does, he goes to a station level and he also goes to a unit. So at the station, there are so many units. And then this unit is delinquent, is not delivering what is meant to deliver. What is the problem? Diagnose the problem, and then they are able to resolve the problem. So I thought that because we have experienced this 200 days, just the performance of each and every station. Tutuka was one of those problematic power stations. So essentially complicit to the levels of intensity of load shedding that we had experienced. Mr. Nxumalo then placed one of our most experienced engineers there to be the head of the power station, Mr. Bruce Moyo. So what have we seen? The Tutuka team have been able to bring down, remember what I said in the last slide, what we are fighting is this thing called the UCLF. So the lower it goes, then you must be happy. The higher it goes, it means you are in serious problems. The PCLF really, if it goes high and the lights are on, then it means that the team has got sufficient headspace, the team has done sufficient planning, the team is building for the future. So you should be confident and optimistic about a load-free future. So they want to make sure that the future is load-shedding proof. So that's how these things relate to each other. So 44% by any measure is an exceptional performance. 44% of reduction, you must remember. That's what I'm talking about. So what has been the UCLF October 2022, they were sitting at 2,654. So essentially they had just one unit, almost one unit operating But the team has brought that down and recovered about 800 megawatts. So they brought about 2 units or so back. And of course, they continue to be at it to ensure that we were able to address this situation. Kendall was also one of our major challenges. The Kendall problem was an emissions problem. So when they wanted to reach the kind of capacity that is desired, you find that we're exceeding our emissions license parameters. Remember that ESCOM has got an obligation. Mr. Marukan and the chair of the board, Dr. Mteto, I had pains to explain all the time that we have a dual obligation to ensure that we give the lights, but also to protect communities. So ESCOM has got that responsibility. So it will not be irresponsible in the manner in which it delivers this, to the extent that we are exceeding our license parameters and we have to pull back the generation capacity, even if it least in some instances, and we had seen that was the case last year with Kendall, they will choose to ensure, let's pull back because we've got this obligation. That's the kind of balancing act that we faced with on a daily basis. Again, we have seen an improvement of 35%, and also they've placed a new station manager. I think it's Morongwen, Tsepiso, yes. Tsepiso is there, and the team. And again, it's a leadership question. She has been able to replenish the team. They are pulling and ensuring that all of the employees are supportive of the work that they are doing. Again, that trend is being continued at Majuba, a 30% reduction in the UCLF. So remember, I'm comparing October of last year with where we are, the trend line from May of 2024 to October of now. Duva again, I think about 2-3 months ago, went into a slump, underperformance, came back, and now consistently they're giving us about 80% performance there as a result of this intervention. So what's the point I'm making is that you find that there are oscillations in the performance. So at some point, this one station is overperforming, exceeding expectations. Others are maintaining that performance like the Tabo consistently, and then others just drop the ball for one reason or the other. Or if you like, the performance goes below expectation. So if you like, as part of the calculus, as long as it's balanced, we're fine. So that's what the public is seeing. But what Mr. Nxumalo is interested in is not just the lights being on, is to go to those power stations that are showing erratic performance, sit with the team and see how best they can improve that situation. Because we really want to get into a space where we're exceptionally confident about our ability to communicate that the load shedding is fully behind us. And then Kusile's challenges are well documented. You know, it was those 3 units which came back, I think, in October of last year, as a result of, if you like, the interim reprieve that we got from the Department of DFFE. We still have an obligation. We want to return those, the permanent stakes. So we have made that commitment and want to stick to that commitment. And of course, when those units came back, that's why you are seeing that they were able to bring down UCLF by 60%, because, I mean, those are big machines. Again, Krill, a great story of how we have been able to recover, and we continue to recover. Like I said, we are not out of the woods yet. 47% increase. The amount of losses were sitting at about 934. Now it's at 131. Arnold, of course, these are some of our oldest power stations. They are reaching about 50 years of age. Becky, Arnold, and this goes to the point that it doesn't follow that the older you are, you can't perform. So there's no relationship between age and performance. I'm talking the power stations. The chair of ESCOM is thinking other things. I'm talking power stations. So we see that there is no relationship. So I think it's important that we continue to communicate that. I was making the point just the other day, and also Mr. Marokane also reminds me of his own experiences and Mr. Nxumalo. I mean, if you look at the Chinese, the Russians, and also the Indians, you find that some of their power stations are much older than this. So they are about, some of them about 70 years of age. They are still running, and the EAF is upwards of 80%. The emissions levels are exceptionally lower than what even our parameters are saying. So what's the point I'm making? These countries in the BRICS family it says there is no relationship. So if you want to shut down for the reasons of shutting down. But don't tell the world that you are shutting down because these things can't perform. And of course, we have our ambition of the nationally determined contribution to achieve anything between 350 and 420 million tons of CO2 equivalent every year, so that we bring down, if you like, the emissions levels. So we'll continue to do that. But as they make the point, explain other reasons. It could be that you are driving the agenda of the NDC, the net zero path. Yes, that's then say that, but don't soil, if you like, the technical issues around performance and also an age. And of course, with Letabo, where we at is that the reason why you are seeing that rate, of course, is over that period, the UCLF has gone up, is because what the team are doing, they are addressing the issues of emissions. So it's something that is managed, and we can achieve that because the entire fleet is performing. But also the point I want to make about Letabo, in relative terms, so what that talks is the UCLF, but in terms of performance, consistent performer, always at the top. If you like, they're in the Champions League of the fleet. I could use references to football. It's making me enemies. I will not mention those teams that they consistently perform. I'll leave it here. And then again, Camden, one of those old power stations, you can see the performance. So here, remember, I'm focusing on the reduction in the losses. So these stations have been performing. And then Matimba also has challenges when you go into the period of summer. It can be very intense, very hot there in Lephalale. And of course, because they use ambient temperature for cooling, it means that the ambient temperature is hot, so you are not able to achieve the levels of cooling that you want. That's something they call vacuum losses. We can get up to 1,800 megawatts of losses, not because of any other thing, but because of the ambient temperature. So that's something that we know. So what Eskom is going to do, for an example, with regards to Matimba, is that we know now, and the team has been able to document that, the irradiation levels are high, the intensity of the sun severe, longer days of sun days in that part of the world. So if you know that you are losing this 1,800 megawatts as a result, or up to these vacuum losses, so how can you attenuate that? So what measures can you take to mitigate that? So one of the things that the Eskom team is working on is that, okay, next to the power station, let me generate, use solar PV. So if you like, that it's not a juxtaposition, but they say essentially is a comprehensive solution to address what we had seen before as a risk. Now we're seeing it differently as an opportunity. So that's the orientation of a new Eskom I'm talking about. And thanks to the leadership of the board, Mr. Marokane and Mr. Numal. So they see things different. Oh, let's not complain. We know it's a given, we can't change. Okay, if this is a given, how can we use the given in our own favor? And that's what the team will be addressing. And again, Groot Vlei, you can see one of the oldest, of course, Medupi, a big concern. I think number of units had gone out and the like. It's a concern because it's one of your newest. It's a concern because we have invested a lot of money. It's a concern because we price in that money in the tariff, and then it's not performing the way that it ought to be. It's something that the team is focusing on. So I thought that we should share the good with the bad. I think it's important that we are able to take account of the performance of the fleet. We don't just give you the aggregate, and we almost hide, if you like, some of these shortcomings. So I want to say that, yes, those shortcomings are there. And that's something that we want to address going forward. And of course, Quebec, we have not been able to meet our own targets. So I'm talking about that target of the return of Unit 2, what you call the slippage. Yeah, so we said it will come on this date. It has not come on that date. So that's something that we are attending to. And of course, internally, the team were able to share what were some of the technical issues. But I think the point, having said everything, the point is once we make a promise to the country, or to ourselves first, we must deliver against that promise. And it's something that I know Mr. Nxumalo is preoccupied with, and I'm confident that out of these lessons, we should be able to achieve. So that's the story of 200 plus 1 days of consistent and uninterrupted periods of supply of electricity, free of load shedding. Like I said when I opened this, the day we get to a point where I address the media and I don't make reference to the number of no load of days without load shedding, that's a victory for us. The day when every household forgets that, by the way, we're 200 days, 198, 300, it means that is a victory for us. And then the day we're able to ensure that we have resolved the issues of load reduction. So this is it's not lost on us. The fact that there are communities, as I speak to you, they really can't differentiate. They have no appreciation of this presentation. So you talk of 200 days of no load shedding. But the point is there are periods in the day that I don't have electricity. So I don't know what the minister is talking about. So that's the point we're making. So it's important that working with the ESCOM, of course, led by the branch of Mr. Monde Bala, we work with municipalities to resolve that problem. And in fact, the president has taken a decision that we are going to go, he'll lead visits to provinces to see how best we work with them to resolve these challenges. Even ahead of the president going there, we call in municipalities to see how best we can work with them. I've made the point that the underinvestment in the infrastructure is going to result into this situation, going to result in a situation where municipalities are unable to provide the kind of capacity that is required to meet the demand. So there's growing demand as a result of natural growth, population growth, and economic induced growth as a result of the pushing factors from the rural hinterlands, people coming into the urban areas looking for opportunities because the labor participation rate in the urban centers is much higher than the rural areas because of the real or perceived prospect of being employed, gainful employment in the urban setting. When these people come, our people come into these spaces, of course, generally poor, so they locate in informal settlement. Then there's proliferation of informal settlements. They must meet their daily needs. Electricity is a key part of that. Unlike in the rural areas, they can fetch wood and make means. You don't have that situation in the large urban centers because this is, if you like, a concrete forest, if there's anything like that. It's all built, so those opportunities are not there. They cry out to local authorities, please connect us. We are ready, if I go to many municipalities, we are ready to pay. We've been calling on this for the past 3 or 4 years. We've been asking that we be connected. We are not connected. The municipalities will tell you that that's not in our planning. Some of them are sitting located in risk-prone areas, floods, you mentioned them, and the municipality will tell you we don't want to regularize that kind of settlement. And they'll tell you that you are going to encourage illegal occupation of land. So what then do these communities do? Find means and ways of illegally connecting. So I'm not trying to condone, justify an act of illegality, but just the lived and experiences of our people. So it has to be a coordinated and deliberate intervention on how we resolve this challenge. And that, of course, results in load reduction. And it penalizes people who are sharing that distribution network, who are diligent payers, because there is no technical solution to isolate those who are diligent payers from those who are connecting illegally. So what do municipalities do? They simply disable the transformer, so it's not able to provide that electricity. That's what we call load reduction. So it's something that is receiving our collective attention. So I really want to say to everyone, we are at it. We'll do everything possible to ensure that we eliminate load shedding. That load shedding should be behind us. At the right time, we'll call it when we have the sufficient evidence and headroom to say to the country that is fully behind us. Remember, at that time when we make that statement, we are simply saying that we are confident that it can also absorb if you like, this 2 to 3.5% economic growth, and at the right time we'll call it. I want to conclude by congratulating Mr. Dr. Mteto and your team, Mr. Marokani and your esteemed executive team, and the men and women of ESCOM who are patriotic, diligent, committed, and also experienced and qualified. These are men and women who have done everything to make sure that we are where we at, and they know that the work is not done. There's a lot more that still needs to be achieved. So thank you very much, TK, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Minister, for taking us through the detail behind the 200+1 consecutive days with no load shedding, which is clearly a result of the concerted implementation of the Energy Action Plan. With that, colleagues, we will now like to open the floor to questions from members of the media. I know that we've got media that is following the briefing who will be participating online. We'll also give them an opportunity after we've taken questions in the room. And Aubrey will be assisting us with those questions. So by a show of hands, those who have questions in the room, please feel free. Any questions in the room? Okay, we'll go to Aubrey. Do we have questions online?
Okay, the first one is directed to Minister Ramokgopa. It's from Chris Yelland from EE Business Intelligence. Now that ESCOM's plant performance has stabilized and significantly improved with load shedding not implemented over 200 days, is it not time for the DOEE and its IPP office to officially call an end to the car power ship emergency procurement for the next 20 years, and to also bring an end the wasteful and fruitless litigation currently in progress with outer and green connection? Then there's the next one from Terence Creamer from Engineering News. There are two questions actually. The minister's presentation focused primarily on ESCOM's factors that have helped improve the prognosis for the power system. Did any non-ESCOM factors play a role? One of the National Treasury's expectations for allowing ESCOM to begin raising new debt for projects is that tariffs moves to cost-reflective levels. However, the minister has said such move would be untenable. How can ESCOM be given the go-ahead for its new strategy in light of these new contradictory positions? Okay, there are more on the other chat, Tsakani. I will start with one from Helmo Prince from Independent Media. He says, please give me a breakdown of which countries received how much gigawatt hours exports in August. For example, Zimbabwe received 456 gigawatt hours. Of the 823 gigawatt hours we imported, how much was wheeled to Mozal? He explained that Mozal is an aluminium smelter in Maputo in Mozambique. He went on to say electricity is wheeled from Cahora Bassa via Apollo to Mozal. And then there's another question from Helmo. Has there been any further slippage in the return of service of the long-term outage units, such as Midubu Unit 4? He also has another question. What progress has been made on updating the IRP? Can I pause or continue?
Please continue.
Okay, there's a set of questions from Naila Ibrahim from News 24. During these 201 days without load shedding, has ESCOM experienced any critical power stations being shut down for repairs, like Kubek Unit 1? With these, has ESCOM relied heavily on OCGTs to ensure that load shedding does not return? Second question from them, does ESCOM believe that it currently has sufficient reserves to allow for the unplanned shutdown and repair of key units in Eskom split? Third question, could you expand on the Eskom 2.0, which would be launched, including the 2,000 megawatts of clean renewable energy that the power utility aims to launch? The fourth question, is the minister confident that the days without load shedding can extend to the summer months? And then there's a question from Alex Winning from Reuters. In Eskom's media statement over the weekend marking 200 days without load shedding, the company mentioned that it wanted to launch 2,000 megawatts of clean energy projects as part of a push for a sustainable energy future. Could you elaborate on that? Does that mean Eskom wants to operate more of its own wind power plants and add its own solar plants? Over what time frame, and how could you fund that? Will that be outside of the REIPPP program? What sort of project delivery method could be used? Would Eskom take on all the risk itself or work with private partners? That's all on the chat for now, Tsakane.
Thank you very much, Aubrey. We'll now get responses. I think we'll start with Mr. Ngumalo, who will be followed by the GCE, and then the minister will sum up the responses. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tsakane. I think the question for me is to deal with the issues of units on the long-term outages. I think since the summer plan discussions, we did indicate that the units on the long-term approach was Medupi 4 and Kubek Unit 2. So those units are still as per those plans at Kubek end of the year, and then Medupi 4 end of the financial year, so which is end of March. So we're still working very hard to bring those units in line with those commitments that we have made into the country. Obviously, with commissioning, we might pick up some issues, but our teams in both these plants are working very hard to ensure that we come back in those terms. And then also suffice to say that we are currently now already entered the summer period. There was a question that talks about summer. We are in the summer. We have started our main maintenance program as well. Here at Letabo is one of the stations. So there is quite a number of units that are already going into the maintenance period. So we continue to do that. Then there was a question, Minister, that was talking, I think it came from News 24, about the reliant on OCG. The point we normally make is that this OCG is part of the running the system. That include everything. It includes all the renewables, everything get taken into account when we run the system. That's why it's for where I'm sitting, there's not one. We need to have enough reserves on OCGTs because they've got a role to also cover when the issue for us is when they are running more and then because of the cost issue. But the minister indicated that if you look at it year on year, we are about 11 to 12 billion now. We are on the reduction on the OCG usage. So that is really the key message. And this year, we are about 5.5 billion less than the budget, which was already reduced for the year as well. So that is quite critical. Then the last point, the minister talks to also Eskom, but maybe then can also come to say, the minister talked to the example of Lipalale with Matimba. So those are the opportunities that we are seeing within Eskom to say, how do we deal with the current opportunities in terms of the funding approach? I think we have been out there, national pressure is supporting that we can do the private partnership with Eskom to deal with this issue of how do we fund those opportunities. So those are the things that we're really looking forward. The board has directed us that we need to really start expediting those processes to make sure that we move forward. Yeah, thanks, Denim.
So the context for our strategy in as far as renewables energy within the clean energy portfolio is really one that acknowledges that Eskom will still have a critical role to play in the electricity supply going forward, and that there's a need to do a step change in terms of embracing other technologies as we get to the towards the end of life of some of the stations. We have said this, that we postponed the shutting down of some of our stations, as was initially planned, to enable us to shore up energy supply, security of supply, but also to enable us to do an orderly transition. An orderly transition that recognizes that we exist within an ecosystem that gets negatively impacted by the discontinuation of operations. And so what we need to do is to really bleed in new technologies alongside our existing operations on our land, on the back of the capacity that we have of our people, and closer grid connectivity. And we indicated that over the next 2 to 3 years, we see a pipeline of just over 2 gigawatts of opportunities. Here at this place where we are at, we're going through the evaluation stages of the commercial proposals for the 75 megawatts PV plant here at Letabo. We've identified renewables in the form of PV and wind for some of the stations, the 5 stations within the Mpumalanga areas. We're going through the details of the funding approach, and as Becky says, this is an approach that we have now embraced, that we will do it on our own or with others. So we're going through those motions of how we partner and bring this to life, because Eskom itself will grow this its capacity from a clean technology perspective. We already have a wind farm. We had the first big wind farm in the country that we are running in Sere. We're going to expand on it. We've got pump hydro, that is operational. And we have ambitions to continue to expand that capacity elsewhere in Tubat's area. So that aspect is something that we'll come back and brief you in detail at the later stage. I think that's really the issue, Minister. There was a question asked regarding how much have we been exporting to our neighboring countries. We are constantly having flow of electricity in and out of our system. It really depends on how the system looks, but one key point that everybody knows is that Zambia has been going through some tough drought situation, and there's been a call to get support, and to the extent that the system allows us, we've been responsive in that area. The moves back and forth towards Mozal, Mozal is an old existing customer of ours, and again, it's really an issue of how much we have and how much they need, and what opportunities do we have to use them in the entire system. We can provide those numbers, but this is nothing unusual. It's business as usual in as far as the flow of electricity to those countries is concerned.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. Maybe just thanks to Becky and Dan for the responses. Maybe for the ones that are left and essentially directed to me. The car power ship is dead in the water. I think a statement was released sometime last year or so to say that it hasn't met the deadline. So something that is buried is behind us. And then maybe to Terrence's question. So it's a delicate balancing act. So on the one hand, the board of Eskom and the management, the board has got a fiduciary responsibility to protect the interest of Eskom, ensure that Eskom continues to be a going concern, and also meet the conditions that are set to them by National Treasury as part of the fiscal support. And Eskom, in their own calculation, they are able to compute and reason out, if you like, to NERSA, which is a body that is responsible for finally making the determination on what is going to be the applicable tariff. Then Eskom makes a submission. Make the submission independent of the minister, because Dr. Mteto and the team have got that obligation. and we don't interfere with that process. And built into that is ESCOM's intention to ensure that they don't rely on the fiscus going into the future. So essentially it's a strategy to free itself from the national treasury and continue to execute its mandate as a responsible and efficient provider of electricity in the country. So ESCOM makes that submission. Then on the other hand, the President unveils the 3 apex priority areas of the 7th administration. What are those? The first one is inclusive growth and job creation. The second one is to fight poverty and reduce the cost of living. The third one is to build a ethical, capable, and developmental state. So let's focus on the second one, on the reduction of the cost of living. So it's a stated government policy to ensure that we are able to reduce the cost of living, just a general appreciation that households and businesses are experiencing, if you like, significant economic headwinds. So we've got an obligation to protect in the main, if you like, low-income households and the poor. And we also know that electricity is a big part of that equation, or if you like, of the cost of living. What the tariff does is a transparent mechanism of supporting an entity like ESCOM. So that's what the tariff dispensation does, and it gets to be socialized with the public. Everyone that wants to make a comment is free to make a comment, and NERSA takes that into an account rather, and then makes a determination. And then there are non-transparent and policy instruments that we can use to ensure that ESCOM still achieves its ambition without necessarily drawing from the tariff approval, but there could be other support that is given to ESCOM. And that's why the policymaker comes in, without interrupting or interfering rather with the NERSA process. So the point is that it's not a binary conversation. So as you put it, those are not contradictory positions. Those are two separate interventions that can be made, so that the chair is confident that whatever decision gets to be made, ESCOM is still able to operate and is able to show that it's meeting its treasury obligations. To the extent that some of these interventions that we are proposing internally, and that's a conversation we're having internally, has got fiscal implications. That's the space of the Minister of Finance. All that I can do is to make the submission. But it's not for me to pronounce on tax matters and all of that. It's the Minister of Finance, so that there's no confusion on where that responsibility lies. But internally, I can raise that, and that's an issue we are raising. And I'm more than confident, like I said to the public, we will protect the interest of ESCOM, what the board wants to achieve, also protect the poor, and will also make sure that the lights are on and the South African economy is able to recover. So we'll be able to do that going forward. And then on the question of the ESCOM 2.0 is my own reference. I'm sure the board will come and explain. What the point I'm making is that, as Mr. the Group CEO, is that ESCOM wants to enter the terrain of renewable energy generation. And I did make the point that that's a soft condition. When I say soft condition, we go back collectively through the shareholder to the Minister of Finance to say these are our ambitions. This is the interventions we want to make. How ESCOM is going to fund, how it's going to structure, if you like, this new generation. ESCOM at the right time will come out in the public. But I think what Becky and then we're articulating was that intention, and then, of course, at the right time, there's going to be a comprehensive articulation. To the extent that the shareholder is satisfied that they're going in the right direction, we will make that ministerial determination, and ESCOM should be able to proceed in relation to that. So the reform of the generation sector or the electricity industry or ecosystem does not preclude ESCOM to be a player on renewable. That's an important point I want to make. And the participation of ESCOM will not crowd out private sector investment. There is sufficient space for everyone to participate. So ESCOM must participate. The more the intensity of the players, of the competition, the greater the value over time to the end consumer. So we welcome ESCOM's intention to participate there. And we know what are the levels of investments. We know what the price points. And of course, it's for ESCOM to bid that, for it to be competitive in that space. So we welcome everyone to participate in that space. There's enough room for everyone to participate. I think that's the point I want to make. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much for all the responses and the clarity. Colleagues, I think we'll take the last round of questions. So if there are any follow-up questions or new questions, we'll take those. Any questions in the room? Okay, Aubrey, we'll come to you again.
Thanks, Sakane. There are two additional questions. One is from Chris Yeland. Please, can Mr. Peggy Ngomalo confirm the planned dates for the return to service of Kubek Unit 2, the date and length of the next shutdown of Kubek Unit 1, the return to service of Medupi Unit 4, the shutdown of Kusile Units 1, 2, and 3, and the return to service of Kusile Units 1, 2, and 3 after the FDG plant is restored? The other one is from Helmo. Have there been any curtailments implemented on IPPs in the recent past? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngumalo, and then we'll take the Minister. I don't know if the Chair would like to say anything as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, TK. Yeah, I just explained the Medupi and Kubek return as well, so maybe let's just emphasize Kubek ended of December and Medupi 4 end of March next year. Then as for Kusile units, those units, they follow the sequence of the outage philosophy. When we deal with outages, all these units at Kusile have been sequenced accordingly. So the bottom line is that the current exemptions allow us to be end of March. So the first unit is going on its outage from next month. And then the last unit will be before March, and then it will all come back. They will all be connected into the grid. So we are on schedule to meet the timelines of those Kusile units. Yeah, that's the portion that was missed on the earlier one. Thanks. Yeah, Kubek, I did touch on it as well. Yeah, twice already this morning. Thanks.
Okay. Colleagues, I think with the...
Kubek 1 outage.
Yes.
Yeah, that one is planned for January next year. Yeah, thanks, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Ngumalo. Colleagues, I think with those responses and clearly with no other questions, particularly from those who are in the room, we have now come to the end of this media briefing. And thank you once again for your attendance, for coming all the way to Letabo Power Station to honor our invitation.